Hello there. Thanks for joining me today for another little mini masterclass wherever you may be in the world. Today we're going to be going step by step making this gorgeous little embroidered necklace here. Just take it off so you can see here. So it's been embroidered in black pearl thread onto linen fabric. We'll be going through the stitches I used, preparing the fabric, and then finishing with how to put it together in this little Hugs and Kisses mini frame that's been laser cut for the purpose. You can see them there. So my name is Helen Stubbings and I'm the designer behind the Hugs and Kisses brand. We've been around since 2001 and we specialise in all things stitching and quilting. So my favourite methods are applique, embroidery, stitchery and English paper piecing. But we cover everything with our shopfront 1/4 inch here in Hobart, Tasmania. We have several products to make life easier and to make our stitching process fun and enjoyable and therapeutic. We also have a large laser machine, and so we design and make a lot of these different mini frames. So they can be used for jewellery, necklaces, brooches, all sorts of things, up to larger ones which you can put on your work or frame and put on the wall. Here's a few other little examples here. They come in 3 different options. So we do them in just a plain raw timber, which I don't have here in front of me, but you would just get the raw timber here, which can be painted if you like, if you don't like just the raw organic timber look. So that one's just been spray painted with a red paint. This one's been painted with a silver paint. You can just use your folk art craft paints as well. They also come in a white laminated MDF and the black that we're using in our project today. You can order the kits, pre-order the kits from our website, and I'll put the links up in the video so that you too can come back and watch this video again and stitch along with us. I'll be covering some basic embroidery stitches that we use to make this particular project, but if you're new to embroidery or you just need a refresher, then be sure to check out my Stitch Sunday program. It's a series of 12 different stitch lessons on the basic stitches, and you get step-by-step photos and tutorials along the way. You also get free patterns to download and practice each new stitch as you learn. I'll pop the link up there as well, or if you join the newsletter on my website, then in one of the emails you get after that you will find the link to our Stitch Sunday program. Okay ladies, I just have to let you know that my battery went flat, so I'm coming back and starting again here, or starting where I finished off, and I'm not quite sure where I got to. So if it's a little disjointed, sorry about that. So I think we were up to how we're going to start our little necklace, how we're going to get started. And we talked about joining up to the free embroidery lessons if you haven't done much embroidery before. Okay, so if you order a kit from us, you get this little postcard pattern which has the design on the back, but you also will get an iron-on transfer. Some of them may actually already be transferred if we've already pre-done for you, with some little fusible lightweight batting on the back. This one's got Parlon on it, it could be Pellon as well. Now, transfers on this darker linen don't tend to hold very well, and they quite often brush off quite quickly. So if you're doing your own transfer, make sure you use a really hot iron and leave it on there for a little bit longer than normal. If it's a little bit faint and you can't see it, then just use a ceramic pencil and go over your lines just to make sure you're going to be able to see them right to the end. I just find the transfers on linen fabric, whether it's pure or otherwise, tend to rub off as you're doing them. Okay, we're going to be using a 4-inch hoop for this project because it's just a little tiny design. If you've got a 6-inch hoop, then you can use a larger piece of background fabric if you've got one, and then you've got enough extra to put in your hoop. Or you can sew a scrap of fabric around the edge so it's large enough to put it in your hoop. Now these little plastic embroidery hoops I find are the best to use. They're inexpensive and they're strong so they don't break like the old bamboo ones do. And the inner ring has got this little ridge on the top here. And most of them will have written on the top. This one says top, sometimes it says this side up. So we sit the inner ring on your surface with the rim to the top. Place your prepared embroidery piece on the top and then pop the outer ring over it. And then pop it through so that rim is actually sitting. I just have to do that again. I'm going to start to tighten it. And then we want that little rim or ridge to sit above, so it pops through so it sits above the outer ring. Then we can pull it really firmly and tighten it as much as you can. So by having that little rim poking through the top there, it grabs your fabric really tightly, but more importantly, it means that the surface that you're going to stitch is sitting above the outer ring and you're not trying to scoop down in underneath. It's actually raised up so you've got perfect access to it. Okay, it doesn't need to be drum tight. It's all right if we can use our finger when we're stitching to push up underneath. Now the thread that I've stitched this version in and that comes in your kits, so in your little kits here, comes with a skein of our Presentia Pearl 16 thread. This is a gorgeous 16 weight thread. Presentia are the only company that make this. It's a 16 weight, so finer than the 12 weight that you normally see. And it's equivalent to 1.5 strands of a stranded cotton. So it's perfect for all of my iron-on transfer lines that I use for all of my embroidery, and you just use a single strand. And that way you're never having to split strands. Okay, so we're going to cut a piece of that. And we thread the end that comes off the wheel and cut the end, not the end that we cut, that's the general rule of thumb, so that the twist of the thread is going in the right direction. We're going to thread our needle and knot it. Now if you want any hints and tips on hooping, applying the stabilizer to the back, or threading a needle even and tying that easy knot, then I have lots of other YouTube videos that you can go and find on my channel that breaks down those basic little techniques that you may never have seen before, and a knot like that could be life-changing for you if you're still into tying knots like this. Okay, so on my YouTube channel. Now I'm going to start with the center hearts here, and on mine I have satin stitched those. Okay. So for a satin stitch, to get a nice satin stitch, I always outline the shape first. So either I outline it with a back stitch or a split stitch. A back stitch I'm going to do today, just a fairly small back stitch. So I've come up on the point and then I'm going to go forward and forward again. And then after that I'm going to go back into the same hole as the end of the stitch before. It's very important that you get that same hole. And whilst we're not going to be seeing this because we're going to satin stitch over it, I'm going to try and do it quite quickly here now to show you. Okay, so I'm going to stitch around the outside shape of my heart. And this is going to be our outline that we lay our long satin stitches over. And this is the only way I seem to be able to get a nice satin stitch. You can do your satin stitch and then do an outline afterwards on the outside of your satin stitch to get yourself a smooth edge. It does tell the embroidery police that you're not a very good satin stitcher and you've tried to cover it up. But sometimes it also adds a little feature and it just neatens off your edges. Satin stitch is not one of the easiest stitches to get looking nice. Okay, so I've done my outline and I would go on and do all 4 of those and then come back and do our satin stitch over the top. So I'm going to start at the center here. I'm going to bring it over and tuck it in at the point down there and then come back up right next to my first stitch. As I come back over and pull the next one through, Just going to use my nail and make sure it sits side by side rather than on top of it. It's important to keep the direction of all your satin stitches the same, so don't start sort of curving around the shape. I'm going to keep them all parallel. Makes for a nicer satin stitch. If you prefer, you can stab stitch this, so you can go down and then come back up. So I'm going back to the center now, and I'll start working out the other direction. And there's my first satin stitched heart. Okay, and then we'd repeat that for all 4. Now the next line out here is a back stitch. So we went through the back stitch before, but I'll give you a few more hints and tips as we go around this circle. So the important things are that when we go back into the end of the stitch before, it's the exact same hole. If you miss it by even 1 thread, you're going to get little white dots, or tan dots in this case, whatever the fabric is behind, in between your stitches, rather than getting a solid line. So a back stitch is a line stitch. By that I mean it should form one solid line of a drawing or a picture. So we don't want little spots in between it. It's also important to pierce that needle right in the middle of the line to get a nice smooth curve. If we go 1 stitch to the left and 1 stitch to the right, even if it's only minute, you will get a zigzag line. You'll also see that I am using what I call a scoop stitch. So I'm doing 2 steps of the stitch in one motion. My needle goes through, I feel it on the back with my finger, I push it up with the finger underneath until I can see where the point of the needle is, where I want it, and then I push it through. The other version of stitching is again that stab stitch, so it's going through to the back, pulling it through, poking around and coming back up to the front and doing half a stitch at a time. I find the scoop stitching is double the speed for me, and I can see exactly where I'm putting my needle by using that finger underneath. Some people can stab stitch quickly and beautifully. It's totally up to you, but I'm a scoop stitcher. We want to try and keep the length of our stitches fairly consistent. There's not a right or wrong length that you should use. It all comes down to the size of the design that you're working on. But just try and keep them consistent. Okay, I'm going to jump over to the next circle now and stitch back stitch around there until I need some new thread. And I'm just about getting short, so I'm going to tie this one off. Just go to the back, run it under your row of previous stitches until it's secure, or you can take it through the loop and tie a knot. and continue on. Okay, I won't do the complete circle now. Then my little spokes inside the two circles, I'm just going to use a straight stitch. So that's just going to be one big stitch. And you can see them here, they're quite tiny. So I'm just going to stab stitch these so I can get them where I want them without distorting the outline stitches. As you can see there, I'm just doing one straight stitch. It's about, oh, it's not a quarter of an inch, it's not an eighth of an inch, so it's about 4 millimeters or whatever that makes it in imperial, between a quarter and an eighth. So it's not too bad just to do one straight stitch there. It's not going to get snagged on a necklace. Alright, so then I'd work my way around and stitch all my spokes. On the outside edge here, we've got 2 rows of scallops, and the inner row, the smaller one, I've actually satin stitched. You could just back stitch it all, but I think that adds a lot more depth and having those solid bits there, so you get a bit of contrast. You could also change colours if you wanted to, put any colour you like. So I'll just, from where I am, again, back stitch the outlines first for my satin stitch. And then we're going to come up on the outside of our back stitch. Again, I'm starting from the center. I just find that that gets me a better shape. And then I'm tucking just inside that outer circle back stitch line there, back up to the top. And then outside my outline, and lay it side by side. Back to the center, and then out to the other side. You need to take care to get that exactly where you want it, one thread away on the outside of your outline. And one more stitch there. Okay, and then my other outer scallop will just be back stitched. Okay, so I'm not going to make you sit through and watch me stitch all of that. I'm going to go away and finish that embroidery, and then I'll come back and show you how I finish it and assemble it and make it into your lovely necklace or brooch or whatever you'd like to do with it. So I will be back very soon. So I finished all my embroidery on here. I've gone through and done all my satin stitch, all the satin stitch around there, and completely finished it. So now I'm going to take it out of the hoop, and I probably could give it a little press if my iron was plugged in. I'll just let that heat up. And next we're going to need our brooch set, or our necklace set here. Okay, you'll see there's three parts to the necklace set. There's our outer frame, there's a circle that fits nice and snug in there, and then there's a circle that's larger. Okay, for starters we can put that one aside, and we want these two here. It's also handy to have a blue washout pen or some sort of marker. Once I've pressed this out, I'm just pressing on a woolly mat, and I'm really just pressing the hoop mark out. Otherwise you could press onto that woolly mat so you don't squish all your embroidery stitches. Okay, so I'm going to turn to the back, and I'm going to place my outer frame where I can see it so that it's nice and even around my embroidery. And I'm just going to mark the inside of that with my blue pen or any sort of pen. Then I want to just pull up this stabilizer. So I want to trim it back to that blue line, just so that I haven't got that bulk that has to wrap around the inner piece. I'm just going to pull it up where I fused it down, and then carefully cut around that marked line. Just take care not to pull your stitches or cut your stitches or cut your linen fabric, or you've just ruined all your work. Okay, next I'm going to cut with a good 1/2 inch seam allowance away the background fabric. Okay, now we're going to take our needle, our same crewel needle, and a long piece of strong thread. Doesn't matter what colour, you won't see it, but I would have used the black if I had the black still here. Thread and knot. And we're going to stitch a running stitch around this outside edge. Don't go too close to the edge because the linen may fray out now that you've cut the edges off. And a fairly small running stitch so that we can get nice small even gathers when we draw it up. Of course, I've just got a loop there. Right, I'm just going to finish on the outside, and then we're going to take the centre, so make sure it's the one that fits into the centre, and pop that in there, and then gather firmly over it. And this is why you need a strong thread here, because you need to pull quite tightly, and just a normal sewing cotton could snap, and then you'd have to start all over again. So just turn it to the front and smoosh it around until you've got it nice and centered. Okay, and then tie off that thread. Make sure it's not going to come undone. Okay, then we're going to take our outer frame. What you want to do first, if you're like me and you want to have either one of these scallops at the center top, or you want this these 4 hearts in the middle, you could either go that way, so that's straight up, or I've gone with the gap here, so that's straight up. So what you want to do is choose which way you want it, and make sure you have a hole at the center top rather than just putting it anywhere and then it's not going to hang straight. So just make sure we've got a hole and we've got it straight like that. Okay, just pop it over. It'll be firm. It's meant to be firm so that it sits snugly in there. Okay, if you've got any little bits of timber coming off, that's just where we've cut out the double hole in the middle so that it's nice and firm. So just scrape those off. And then from the back, push it down so that it is flat across the back, so even here. And then we're going to take our craft glue and glue. This is a Helmar 450 quick dry clear craft glue. Looks like I've got my end blocked. Okay, we're going to glue in the middle on our gathered edges and then just on the edge of the timber as well. We need a bit of glue around there. Okay, so it needs to be a strong craft glue. This is all that's going to hold. And then we're going to take our backing piece and put it centrally on top. And then take some binding clips and clip it together. Now, the backing piece needs to glue onto this piece. So what that will do is it will push your embroidery part just a little further forward. It'll pop out the front. But we need to make sure that this piece is gluing to the front piece and this is wedged in between so that it's all going to hold. So you can use just clothes pegs or some clamps if you haven't got binding clips, but these are a good way. And yet another use for these very useful binding clips. And then we would just leave that to dry. Once it's dry, in your little kit, you've got a little jump ring, which is just a tiny little circle, and it's got a split in it. So we need to take pliers, just long nose pliers or little jewelry pliers, and just open up that split, and then you'll put it through your top loop and then close it up again, and then thread your chain through the jump ring. That means that the necklace will hang that way instead of hanging that way. Okay, if you just put the chain straight through, it's going to flip all the time, but this way it'll hang straight. So there's your jump ring. And that is what your finished project will look like. So now you can go and wear it with pride and show everyone your skills and what you've learned. So again, we've got the kits available, or we've just got the variety of different mini frames. You could come up with a million ideas on how to fill yours. Here's another one just with little English paper piecing in it, and a few other examples here with embroidery. Just a nice piece of fabric makes a good little brooch, and you can also remember paint or change the color to match the colors of clothes you wear, or a special outfit, or all manner of things. The possibilities are endless. So thanks for joining me. Be sure to check out my other mini masterclasses that we've been doing. Remember, if you're on YouTube, subscribe so you don't miss any of the free classes. If you're on Facebook, find them on my page and follow the page, or join our Hugs and Kisses mailing list on the website, and then you'll be alerted anytime we put a new video up. Thanks for joining me. I hope you've enjoyed it, and maybe you've learned a thing or two, or you'd love to order the kit and come back and watch the class again and step by step go through with me. That's it for today. See you again in the next class. Bye.